team. If you ask any successful trapper or real estate agent, they will all tell you it's all about location, location, location. And it sounds corny, but it's not. It makes a huge difference. The way I like to look at it is that I want a blind member of the species that I'm targeting to bang into my control method. I want to remove that much maybe out of the equation and make it as definite as possible. And location of my trap plays a huge part in that. So every species has a different way that it moves through the landscape, and they have different size home ranges and different preferred habitats. So it does vary species by species, and you need to take that into consideration. And as I will always say, you need to put the animal at the centre of the equation every time you think about what you're going to do. Rats, for example, you need quite a tight regime because they can have such small home ranges. Possums are bigger, but still quite tight really. But with your apex predators, particularly your mustelids and your feral cats, you can have quite a large regime because they are moving through a much larger landscape, and they are moving almost in more of a set way as well. So let's have a bit of a chat about some of the things that I would suggest we could do to improve our locations around trapping. So for apex predators, just to keep it nice and simple, I like to think of the 3 R's, and it's as simple as that: rivers, ridges and roads. I'm often thinking quite linear in the landscape. I'm looking for travel routes, and apex predators really like that sort of thing. If you have an open paddock with a lone tree out in that paddock next to bush, often a possum will go across that paddock and target that tree. Apex predators are more likely to be on the edge. Think edge hunting. That's a lot what they do. Why is that? It's because they are hunting for prey that likes to be close to cover for safety, but they like to be safe as well, because don't forget that a lot of our predators are also prey species as well. So think edges. If you've got a forest edge, fence lines, and once again those rivers, ridges and roads, think about all of those things that might feed into where an animal's most likely to be moving. And it can come down to 1 or 2 meters. Ferrets in particular are like that. They will move within this sort of a space night after night, or every second night, as they move through a landscape. And if your trap's 5 meters over there, your ferret is a lot less likely to encounter your trap. They're really like that. They're quite specific in the way they move through a landscape. Cats and stoats, not so much. So as well as the 3 R's, rivers, ridges and roads, I'm also thinking a lot about intersections and bottlenecks. I want to look for any features in a landscape, whether they're natural or unnatural, that are going to help channel the predator that I'm targeting into the control method. And it makes a huge difference. Great example on rivers, for example, ferrets, stoats, cats, they don't like getting their feet wet. They're just like us, and if you think a little bit like we would think, you're probably getting it about right. They're going to take the path of least resistance, and they're going to try and keep dry. Simple as that. So think about where you're positioning your trap to make the most of that. And if you have 2 or 3 features that channels an animal along, intersecting, there's your intersection. Bridges are a great example of that. Often bridges are a real hot spot for trapping. Obviously you've got to be safe with traffic and all those other things, and think about that, but they can make a real difference. Culverts, all of those sorts of micro features that will hedge your bets. You know, I don't like being beaten, so when I'm trapping, I like to put all the odds in my favour as much as I can. So Johnny, you say, what about in contiguous bush where it just all looks the same and we're trying to target stoats? What do we do there? Well, there's still features in a landscape like that that are going to bring the animals to your trap a lot better. And for stoats, for me, spurs and ridges are game number 1. It's where I catch the most stoats. And often what I see is when there's a trap line on a sidle line, where you get your most stoats is where that trap line crosses a spur or a ridge. So hedge your bets. Focus your efforts on the areas where you're going to get more bang for your buck.
Stoats in the bush too, look for play trees, jungle gyms, or we call them a little bit too, but often a big old rimu or a rata or something like that with lots of holes and root structure at the base of it. Stoats love playing around that, and it becomes a game for them. So often those sorts of spots in contiguous bush are well worth targeting as well. Just listening to tuis. Look, when you're thinking about trap locations, don't forget to think about what's happening in the whenua that you're operating in month by month. What's happening in each species calendar, and what's happening with the food that they eat and where they want to be each month. And possums is a great example. There's lots of trees that flower or fruit at different times of the year. For exotic trees, old man pines, willows and poplars are where you'll find possums at certain times of the year, and they will go a long way to get to those feed trees. So think about what's going on. But I know you can't move all your traps every month, so you do need to make a call and hedge your bets. And for me, that comes back down often to those 3 R's when it comes to apex predators. So one thing that a lot of people can tend to overlook when it comes to apex predators, and especially stoats and weasels, is that they're also a prey species as well. And often what I see when it comes to location of traps is people will put it where it's easiest for them, but not necessarily where it's going to be the most effective for their chosen species. And a great example of that is when I see a dock box trap about 5 to 10 metres out into grassland and away from cover. Your trap should be right on the edge. Sometimes there's reasons you can't do that, but try and put it where it's as close to cover as possible. And it's not just because a stoat's a prey species. Think about a stoat as well. What's their mindset? Sometimes a stoat's hunting, and sometimes a stoat is trying to be safe. And when a stoat is in the open, it's feeling vulnerable and it doesn't really want to be there. I can promise you that. So you want your stoat to encounter your trap when it has a hunt mindset, because that's when it's most likely to interact with your trap as well. So just to recap quickly, there's so much we could talk about in this space, but let's remember the 3 R's: rivers, ridges and roads, bottlenecks and intersections, using landscapes and unnatural features to channel animals into your control method, hugging edge country rather than having stuff out in the open where they're going to feel more vulnerable. Those are the things that can make a huge difference to how effective your trapping regime is, and it needs to be addressed trap by trap.